So, guys, in the last 8 years, I should say, we have dealt with over 6,000 people from Chicago REIA just in the last 4 years since we started. 320 people in Mastery with over 4,000 properties. And we ourselves have done close to 900 transactions. And there's one question that keeps coming up, and that is buying properties at auctions. And so today I wanted to take a piece of it. So there's two types of auctions. There's online auctions, and then there are auctions that are the sheriff sales. And today I wanted to address the issue about online auctions. The reason this video got prompted was just this morning I get a call on my way to the office that somebody bought a property at auction and they paid completely the wrong amount, what they should have paid, and this is a property that should have never been bought. And that kind of prompted this thought that why is it so many people make mistakes with auctions? So the question is that what are the biggest mistakes that people make at auctions? And then you should ask yourself is, how do I avoid them? So I wanted to cover those really briefly. So the number one mistake at auctions, what I'm going to call it is, it's called proxy bidding. So, and I'm just going to put bid instead of spelling the whole thing out. It's proxy bidding. What does that mean? So on an online auction, what is being sold is a property is being sold that is an REO. It's a bank-owned property. So instead of putting the property on the MLS, I mean, think about this. They didn't put the property on the MLS. Why? See, what they're trying to do is they're trying to find another channel, another medium where people are going to make foolish decisions. A lot of times whenever people are bidding on these properties on auction, they're not working with a real estate agent. They're kind of doing it on their own, sitting at their home, and they're clicking a button. And what they do is they have a proxy bidder. That means, proxy bidder means it's a fake bidder that is bidding against you. And a lot of times people will call me and tell me, Andrew, you don't understand. There were multiple people that were bidding against me. I'm like, how do you know? See, how do you know who's bidding against you? Just because it's in some of the auction sites, it'll show the first letter of the person's name and kind of the last letter or the email of the person's name. How do you know? And what happens is this: most of these banks, most of these institutions have a proxy bidder, or the auction company like Hubzu, like auction.com, like Hudson and Marshall. All these people have proxy bidders that are bidding against you. So even if there might not be any competition, the price keeps going up and you think, oh my God, I'm going to lose this deal. Oh my God, I'm going to lose this deal. And invariably what happens is on these auctions, because there's no MLS control on it, people end up paying way too much, because guess what the job of the proxy bidder is? The job of a proxy bidder is not to represent you. Who's representing you at an auction? Guess what? Nobody. See, if you're in Mastery, we would not let you bid any higher than the number that we agree with you on. But what happens to most people? Most people bid too high because there is a proxy bidder that is ginning up the bid against you, and you are not even told, you don't even know that there's a proxy bidder, which is a complete fake bidder. And what does that do? I'm going to discuss that in point 5 when we get there. But keep in mind, the biggest mistake people make is, number 1 is bidding against a proxy bidder. Number 2 is occupied. So I'm just going to put OCC. Versus vacant. So why is this a problem? A lot of times what will happen is people will bid on these auctions and they bid on the property and it's occupied. So if you're in the city of Chicago and the property is occupied, or it really doesn't matter where you are, but if the property is occupied, how are you going to get financing on the property if you intend to get financing on the property? A lot of times people will bid and they think just because a few of the properties that are on there, they say financing allowed, they'll bid on a property that is occupied, they'll run their credit card, and they keep a reserve of your credit card, $2,500, $3,000, and guess what happens? And people lose those deposits. Why? Because they think they can get financing on it, but if the property is occupied, you can't get an appraiser in there, you can't find out, the appraiser can't go there, and hence, guess what happens? You can't put financing on it, and then people end up losing deals. The second part of occupied versus unoccupied properties. So think about this. You bought a property, let's say that's for a flip value, it has a value of $220. You're buying the property at, say, 120. You say, Andrew, it's a great deal. I'm going to buy it for 120. I'm going to do 35 to 40,000 in work, and on the back end, I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to sell it for a profit. I'm going to make 30 to 40,000 bucks. All my numbers work, except it's occupied. Guess what happens if it's occupied? What happens if it's occupied is this. Now you have to figure out who are the tenants that are living there, or who are the people that are living in the property. And then you have to go through the entire process of evicting them. If there are any unknowns, you have to serve them with a proper, either a sheriff person or somebody who's properly authorized by the court to go to the property and basically get them evicted. Now that adds 6 months, 8 months, 9 months to your timeline. So am I saying it's bad to buy occupied properties versus unoccupied properties? No. It's not bad, but whenever we're buying occupied properties, we're figuring that into the price. So depending on what we're buying, where we're buying. If we're buying in the city of Chicago, guess what? And we're going to go knock on the door even though it's occupied, and we're going to find out if these people are tenants. At least we're going to do our due diligence up front. And if they're tenants and they have a bona fide lease, guys, to kick out somebody in Chicago that has a bona fide lease, for this video, I don't have time to get into it, but to kick out somebody with a bona fide lease, this is for the city of Chicago, you need to pay them close to $10,000 and some change to be able to break the lease. And it's not that the tenant has to know that. You, as the new landlord that wants to break the lease because you want to, say, do a deconversion, or you want to do something else with the building, and you get them out, you have to inform them of their rights under the tenant landlord ordinance of Chicago. And the fines are 4 times if you do not do that. So that's the second biggest place where people make a mistake. Number 1 is proxy bidding. They bid up the property too high, thinking somebody else is bidding. Number 2 is occupied versus vacants. Number 3 is they don't understand the financing that they can put on these properties, or financing versus cash. And this is kind of a point that is tied in with point number 2. But I wanted to list it as separately because so many people will bid on properties where clearly financing is not allowed or cannot be allowed because the property is occupied, or they clearly say on these websites that, hey, guess what? You can't put financing on it. And yet, what do people do? They will say cash, and then during the time before it goes to before they go to closing, they switch it and go, well, I don't really have the cash. And people lose money all the time with this silly mistake. Now, this is a mistake hopefully you're not going to make if you're watching this video. Because guess what? What these auction type of websites love to do is they basically get a credit card, or they get earnest money from you, and then guess what happens? If you're not able to follow through, if you haven't done the next point is going to be due diligence. If you haven't done your due diligence, maybe it's on the money, maybe it's on the occupancy status. If you haven't done that, guess what's going to happen? You're going to lose that money. Number 4 is going to be due diligence. And this is one of those things that invariably people will miss. I mean, this is something that when people are in mastery, we give them what we call is a 3-pager. And we want them to follow that checklist point by point by point. And guess what? If you don't, and if I find out, I'm going to call you. Why? Because I don't want any of the items on the due diligence missed. See, this you have to do for yourself, which is, have you checked if the property, what is the condition of the property from the outside? Did you go and knock on the door? Did you talk to the neighbors? Did you figure out if it's in a floodplain? Did you figure out if the property is rentable, if it's in a condo association? Did you do the insurance in terms of check for any damages over there or losses to the property in the last few years? See, these are all the things. Did you figure out if it's the right zoning? Did you submit a FOIA request with the village? See, there's a long list of about 42 to 45 questions that we're going to go through for our properties or for anybody in mastery. See, that is the exact same process you have to do for yourself, which is doing the proper due diligence. A lot of people fail with auctions, not because they have to. They fail because they don't do number 1, they don't understand number 1, they don't understand number 2, they don't understand number 3, and they don't certainly do number 4. And the biggest one, this is the biggest one, what they really, really, really count on people failing, is they give up too early. So what happens with these auctions is this, right? They will have an opening bid on the auction, and the opening bid would be something ridiculous, which is $30,000. And clearly that property is worth all day long, 200, 220, 300, just a whole lot more than what they start at the initial price. You really think they don't know what they're doing? I mean, you really think that? I don't think so. See, they are very well aware of exactly what they're doing. See, what they're doing is they're baiting you. It's like basically, chumming the fish before somebody goes fishing. What are they trying to do? They're trying to gather a bunch of fish around the boat so the fisherman's job becomes really easy. And that's exactly what these auction sites do. What they do is they want to reel you in. They want you to get all pumped up and excited. Oh my God, I'm going to buy the property for 30. Well, if not 30, maybe 50. If not 50, maybe 60. If not 60, maybe 100. I know 110's got to be the deal. What they're doing is they gin up all this pent up kind of energy from people, and then people start overbidding. And a lot of times, if they don't reach the price that they want, that let's say their price the bank wants to sell it for is 130, somebody reaches 120. What they're going to do is, if you're the final bidder, they're going to say, okay, you won the auction, congratulations. You're going to get a call from these auction sites. And then guess what happens? They're going to say, well, our client reserves the right not to sell you the property, but we need 10 days. And then within 5 or 6 days, they're going to call you and say, well, gee whiz, really 115 is not enough for the client. And guess what happens? People give up. And they're like, well, I bid on the property, I didn't win it, or I won the auction, and even after that, they didn't give it to me. Guess what's going to happen to that property? It's going to go back on the site in another week or two. And then they're going to go through the same cycle, the same cycle, the same cycle. Guys, we have bought over 70 to 80 properties just from bidding on the same property 10, 15, 17 times. We have won the auction every single time. Finally, the bank decided, okay, we're going to go ahead and sell the property. See, if you could understand point number 1, which is proxy bidders, point number 2, which is occupied versus vacants, point number 3, which is about financing versus cash. The next one is due diligence. All the 47 points that we have, if you understood those, and if you understood that you can't give up just because you bid on the property once or twice, believe me, 99.9% of you could succeed with auctions. The question is not if it works. See, we know it works. The question is, do you know how to work it? Hopefully you learned something. Thank you. Have a great day.